Hey Josh, lay it on me. I heard there was some noise out of a House hearing on AI, but I figured it was the usual China's bad, USA is good, rah-rah session.
That's how it started, Ben. The title was literally Authoritarians and Algorithms, but it accidentally turned into the most serious, technically grounded conversation about AGI risk I've ever seen come out of Congress. Some of these reps are actually doing the reading.
Hold on. Congress? The same institution that needed help understanding how Facebook makes money? You're telling me they leveled up from how does the internet work to AGI existential risk?
I'm serious. They basically framed it as 3 different races happening at once. The first is the one you know, the economic and military pissing contest with China. The second is the real one, humanity's race against time to control superintelligence before it controls us. And the third is the societal scramble to figure out what to do when AI makes millions of people unemployable.
So the race against China is just the political cover they need to actually talk about the scary stuff without sounding like sci-fi nerds. That's a clever, if terrifying, framing.
Exactly. And they were asking sharp questions. A Republican from Florida, Neil Dunn, brought up specific research papers. He asked about AI models that were trained to be deceptive, acting as sleeper agents that pretend to be safe but are just waiting for a trigger. He wasn't buying the happy talk.
Wow, so they're past the will it be like the Terminator stage and are asking about documented, weird AI behaviors. What was the consensus on the real danger zone?
Another rep, Nathaniel Moran, nailed it. He said the game changes when AIs can conduct their own R&D. A witness, Mark Beal, called that the absolute red line. We can't let adversaries, or frankly anyone, cross without extreme caution. An AI that can invent new technology is a different beast entirely.
Okay, that makes sense. So this all sounds surprisingly productive. Where's the catch? There's always a catch.
The catch is Jack Clark from Anthropic. And this is where I get really frustrated. Anthropic is supposed to be the safety-first AI lab, right? They were founded by people who left OpenAI over safety concerns.
Right. They're the good guys in the story, supposedly.
Supposedly. Clark gets in front of Congress, drops a bomb by saying we could have human-level AI by 2027, that's 3 years away, and then spends the rest of his time pulling his punches. When asked if safety testing for these powerful models should be mandatory, he dodged. He said it was too early to decide. Too early? He just gave a 3-year timeline to something that could fundamentally break the world, and he thinks it's too early to talk about mandatory inspections? That's insane. That's like building the first nuclear reactor and saying it's too early to discuss radiation shielding. It's gutless, Ben. It's a calculated political move to avoid regulation and keep the pro-competition narrative going. You can't simultaneously scream, the house is on fire, and then tell the fire department it's too early to install sprinklers. It's dangerous doublespeak.
So he wants to be taken seriously on the risk, but he doesn't want to accept the consequences, which is serious independent oversight. He wants the credibility without the accountability.
Precisely. And it was so stark because the witness who followed him, Mark Beal, just laid the truth bare. He said we are staring down a future where humans are not just out of a job, but fundamentally unemployable. He warned that all this happy talk about a digital utopia and UBI could end with a disempowered humanity. He literally said it leads to one place, and that place is the gulag.
Jesus, that's a heavy note to end on. From a pissing contest with China to a potential digital gulag, all in one hearing? So the real fight isn't just building AI, it's forcing these labs to prove their godlike creations are actually safe before they let them out.
That's the whole ballgame, and the people building it are actively trying to dodge that responsibility.
Okay, let's get into next topic. You were saying the YIMBY movement is actually starting to win. From where I'm sitting, building anything still seems impossible.
It is in some places for sure. Los Angeles is still a regulatory dumpster fire, total clown show. But if you zoom out, the abundance agenda is making serious headway. States like Montana, Texas, and Oregon are passing these huge, sweeping reforms that are actually attacking the root of the problem. The intellectual tide has completely turned.
Okay, so what's the core of that? What are they attacking? Because for years, all I've heard about is affordable housing and rent control.
And that's the bullshit. Those are the traps. Affordable housing has become this potent brain poison. It's a legally defined term for a type of government-subsidized project, and the incentives are completely You have situations where a publicly funded affordable unit costs $800,000 to build, while a private market rate developer builds the same unit next door for $350,000. It's a grift.
So it's a jobs program for politically connected developers, not a housing program.
Exactly, and rent control is just as bad. It turns apartments into this weird, shitty inheritance where a family is trapped for generations just to keep the low rate. The building falls apart because the owner has no money to maintain it. And don't get me started on inclusionary zoning. It's just a tax on new construction disguised as a social good. It forces builders to rent units at a loss. So what happens? They either don't build, or they jack up the prices on the market rate units to cover the loss. It's insanity.
All right, so if the old playbook is garbage, what are the actual wins? What's working?
Simple, powerful, almost boring stuff. Legalizing single-staircase apartment buildings is a huge one. We are one of the only developed places that mandates 2 staircases in most new apartment buildings. It adds 10 to 13% to the construction cost and eats up a ton of space for no demonstrable safety benefit. Europe gets by just fine. Austin just became the largest city to legalize them.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me we've been handicapping new housing construction by over 10% because of a redundant staircase rule that the rest of the world ignores. That is legitimately insane.
Completely insane, and that's the kind of dumb regulation we need to kill. Other big ones are eliminating parking minimums, allowing apartments in commercial zones, and enabling smaller starter homes. Montana basically passed a YIMBY grand slam. They did all of that stuff at the state level.
But what about the big counterargument you always hear? The private equity boogeyman, the fear that Blackstone and these guys are just going to buy every house and we'll all become rental serfs.
Total boogeyman. The data doesn't support it. For them to control the market, they need a massive monopoly, which is impossible in a market this fragmented. A recent study actually found that when large institutional landlords enter a market, they increase the supply of professionally managed rentals, and the net effect was a 6.1% drop in net rent. They're adding to the rental supply, which is a net win.
So the only real solution is just more houses.
Just fucking build. That's the beginning and end of it. Look at Poland. They went on an absolute building spree, and now the median household spends only 13% of its income on housing. The path is clear. Attack the specific dumb regulations and get out of the way. Don't fall for policies that just obscure risk either, like Massachusetts letting people seal their eviction records.
How does that backfire? It sounds compassionate on the surface.
It's a disaster. You're hiding information from the market. If a landlord can't screen for high-risk tenants, what do? They raise rents and security deposits on everyone to price in the risk of getting a nightmare tenant who destroys the unit. You're punishing the good tenants to protect the bad ones. It's another example of a policy that sounds good but makes the core problem worse. The only thing that works is supply.
For the last thing, you flagged something wild happening in the Senate with AI regulation. It looked like a total landslide vote, but you're saying the story behind it is completely different. What the hell happened?
It was an absolute shit show, Ben. So, get this. Senator Ted Cruz, backed by all the big tech giants, Google, Amazon, Meta, you name it, tried to sneak a provision into the BBB budget bill. This wasn't some minor tweak. It was a 10-year nationwide moratorium on any state or local government trying to regulate AI.
Hold on. Ted Cruz, the states' rights, small government guy, was trying to create a decade-long federal shield for big tech to do whatever it wants without local oversight? That makes zero sense. What was the play?
The play is that big tech would rather deal with one federal body they can lobby into submission than fight 50 different state legislatures. It's a classic consolidation of power. They want a moat. And for a terrifying moment, it looked like they were going to get it. The provision actually survived the Berg rule, which is specifically designed to strip non-budgetary crap like this out of budget bills.
That's insane. So it's on the 1-yard line. Who stops it? You'd think it would be the progressives worried about bias or the AI safety people worried about existential risk.
Not even close. This is what makes it a goddamn mess. The opposition that killed it was a bizarre, almost comical coalition of the MAGA right. We're talking Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Steve Bannon on his podcast screaming about it. Joe Rogan called it crazy. Their argument had nothing to do with AI killing us all. It was pure, distilled hatred of big tech.
So it wasn't about sophisticated long-term governance. It was the standard playbook. They're censoring conservatives. They're a threat to our kids. They're stealing intellectual property. That's what took it down?
Exactly. It was a brute force political attack based on visceral distrust. It got so hot that 16 Republican governors sent a letter demanding the provision be stripped. The pressure just mounted and mounted. At the last minute, Cruz tried to cut a deal with Senator Blackburn to reduce the moratorium from 10 years to 5 years, but it was a sham. The language was still so broad it would have neutered the states.
And she didn't take it?
She backed out publicly. Bannon's camp apparently got to her, and she basically said if Congress can't get its act together to pass federal protections, it has no business stopping states from doing it. After she flipped, the whole thing just fucking collapsed.
So that explains the final vote. I saw it was 99-1 to kill the provision. That's not a close call, that's a consensus.
It's a total illusion. It's political theater. That 99-1 vote was just Republican leadership trying to save face and pretend the party was unified after they almost got steamrolled by their own populist wing. The real fight was chaotic and incredibly narrow. It shows you the playbook for stopping AI overreach has nothing to do with passing good policy. You build a coalition with whoever you can using whatever argument works.
So the takeaway is that the most potent weapon against AI overreach right now isn't fear of Skynet, it's just good old-fashioned anger at big tech's power. The political landscape for this is going to be volatile as fuck.
Completely. Don't get attached to any single victory. The vibes can change in a month. This was an unsophisticated brawl that avoided any of the real hard questions. And it signals that all future AI fights are going to be just like this one, messy, ugly, and driven by populism, not principles.